Warm welcome to everyone. We have this program, True Self-Esteem. I will be speaking English. I hope everyone is okay with that. And we have 1 hour ahead of us now with this interview. I'm soon gonna invite Peter to come on so you can meet him. But before that, I just want to say some things. First of all, is that we are recording this program. So if you are okay with that, you can have your camera on. There will be some time in there where you can ask questions to Peter. So if you like to put your camera on, or if you just want to speak through the mic, or if someone doesn't want to do that, then it's okay to type in the chat. By the end, we also will have some time for a meditation commentary. So before I introduce Peter, I would like to read a little text. It comes from a book called Advice from a Failure by Keogh. You do not need to be loved, not at the cost of yourself. The single relationship that is truly central and crucial in life is the relationship to the self. It is rewarding to find someone you like, but it is essential to like yourself. It is quickening to recognize that someone is a good and decent human being, but it is indispensable to view yourself as acceptable. It is a delight to discover people who are worthy of respect, admiration, and love, but it is vital to believe yourself deserving of these things. For you cannot live in someone else. You cannot find yourself in someone else. Of all the people you will know in a lifetime, you are the only one who you will never leave nor lose. To the question of your life, you are the only answer. To the problem of your life, you are the only solution. So, a warm welcome to Peter Keogh. I hope I pronounce it right. So Peter is in charge of Brahma Kumaris Center in Oslo for quite many years. And I know you've been within the Brahma Kumaris for over 20 years, and you've been in different countries. I think you've been in Hong Kong. Was it Hong Kong? Yeah, Hong Kong.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And you are originally from UK?
Yep.
Yeah. And as a profession, you're retired now, but you've been an engineer and technical consultant. And you have, together with some other in Brahma Kumaris, you have created a course that is given in many countries, and it's called True Self-Esteem course.
That's right.
I've not attended that course, but I have been in a retreat over a weekend with one of the women that has been part of this, making this course, a psychologist from UK, from United
Beach,
States.
California.
Yes, and I like that very, very much. So that's why I got the idea to interview you about this subject. So, welcome. We will start with a question. What would the sign of low self-esteem be? And what are some of the factors of there being low self-esteem?
Okay, it's a good place to start. Let me first of all define low self-esteem. Low self-esteem is what you think about yourself. It's how you give yourself regard, or not, as the case may be. It's similar to self-respect. Self-respect is how you treat yourself. So self-esteem is how you think about yourself, and self-respect is how you treat yourself. So if you have low self-esteem, it means that you have a low opinion of yourself. And that can have some profound effects on the way you conduct your life and how you live, basically. So in these are all factors in low self-esteem. You tend to feel worthless, not worthy of any elevated position. You can be sad, and the inside of your head is full of turmoil and noise, and the noise comes from your concern as to what people are thinking about you. How do I appear today? How is my reputation? Those sorts of things. And it leads to a state of anxiety. And that causes a lot of noise in your head, so it has various other consequences. So you become indecisive, for example. It's hard for you to make decisions quickly and easily. There is a reverse of this as well, is that sometimes people work very hard to get senior positions, directorships and the like. And they do that to prove to themselves and the world that they are worthy people. And my experience has been that you can test their own view of themselves by questioning or criticizing their work or themselves. And if they have low self-esteem, this is unbearable and they will explode. Yeah. Whereas somebody who has good self-esteem would be able to take that criticism and not be concerned about it. So, yeah. If you have low self-esteem, then you cannot be seen to be making mistakes. If you are seen to make a mistake, people will say, well, that means you're a failure. You're no good at your job. Yeah. So for someone with low self-esteem, mistakes are very bad news. So you will try and pretend it wasn't your fault, it was his fault, somebody else's fault. And it wasn't really a mistake at all, it was just an interpretation. No, that's fine. Yeah. So yes, it's bad news to make mistakes if you have low self-esteem. And it also means that you want to stay in your comfort zones. Yeah, you want to stay in areas which are not challenging. So when I was in Hong Kong, for example, working professionally, I had a member of the team who had particularly low self-esteem. And we were working on a job, high pressure, a lot of work to be done. And this gentleman spent all of his time working on the art design for the front cover of the report. I do not need anybody to work on the art design of the front cover of the report. I need some work done. We have real work here, but he wouldn't do it. He point blank wouldn't do it. And he didn't want to be seen to be deficient. He didn't want to telephone people and ask questions because they might think that he doesn't know, which of course is exactly the truth. Yeah? That's why we're asking the questions. So you get that psychology. People with low self-esteem don't want to be seen to not know. And they tend to be very critical of others. They want to try and put other people down to their level as they see it. So this particular gentleman in Hong Kong was always being critical of the Chinese members of the team. And I have to say the Chinese members of the team produced a great deal more work than he did. And they were a great deal more knowledgeable than he was. And they were valuable members of the team. Yeah, still that's by the by. If you have low self-esteem and you meet a problem, the technical term we would use in the business is that they would go to ground. They would be shuffling papers around the desk, but no work would actually be getting done. Because if they had tackled this problem and tried to solve it, they might not succeed. So they might fail. And as I said before, for somebody with low self-esteem, failure is just really bad news. So rather than tackle the problem, they will just ignore it. They go to ground and not do any work. And you really have to be sensitive to that if you're a team leader to make sure that none of your team have gone to ground. None of the team have stopped working because they've hit an obstacle. Yeah. If you have low self-esteem, you are vulnerable to two factors: dependent behavior and codependent behavior. And I'll come back to those later on. But dependent behavior includes things like smoking, drinking, taking drugs. And you will engage in those things because they give you a lift. They make you feel good about yourself, even if it's only for a temporary period. And never mind the fact it's doing damage to your body and your social life and your friends and family and all the rest of it. Yeah. You don't care. You need the lift so badly, you will engage in this behavior. And if you have low self-esteem, you tend to be stuck in the past. The past is a safe place to be. You know what happened in the past and you can manage that. The present and the future, at any moment, that you could be challenged and be seen to be not adequate in some regard. So the present and the future are very dangerous places. The past is safe. It's good to stay in the past. Not very helpful, but that's how they view it. And if you have low self-esteem, you are very dependent on other people's view of yourself. You're critically dependent that they should continue to think good of you. It means that you become a people pleaser. Yeah, you're not independent, you're dependent. And it's very hard for somebody who has low self-esteem to experience success. Even if they've been successful in a piece of work, every piece of work along the way, you make mistakes. And it's fine. You have the experience, you made a mistake, you fix it and you move on, you learn something. Yeah, then you finish up with a nice report. But if you have low self-esteem, the thing that you remember particularly about the work that you did was that you made mistakes. And therefore I must be a failure. And you have great difficulty experiencing the joy of success. That's something that will elude you. It's not very good. And you tend to feel guilty about those mistakes that you've made. You feel bad about them. And you feel that people might find them at any time and say, you know, you've made those mistakes. Yeah. So it's very fearful to have low self-esteem. You live in fear. And it's very insecure. You don't feel secure about anything. You could be exposed at any time. You could also tend to be quite angry. You tend to be crippled by anger, and your anger becomes uncontrollable. And people in low self-esteem tend to want to be significant. They want to be the number one person in the team. They want to be seen to be, I'm number one. I'm the top dog. Everybody has to listen to me. And it's interesting that when I became aware of all these things, I think back to the business meetings I've attended, and I become aware that the first 15 or 20 minutes of the meeting, everybody feels that they have to speak. My voice needs to be heard. People need to know that I'm here and I'm authoritative and I can speak at this meeting. Yeah, very tedious, complete waste of time, but never mind. In low self-esteem, you would tend to procrastinate. That means you would do the things which are fun and easy, but not the things which are difficult and hard and need to be done. Yeah, I happen to have degrees in procrastination. I'm really good at it. Yeah, and yeah, that's the broad picture. And you should be able to see from this that low self-esteem affects pretty well every area of your life. It affects the kind of work that you do. It affects how much money you earn. It affects the friends that you make. It affects who you get married to. Because people will come together who have the same level of low self-esteem. They're comfortable in each other's company. If somebody has high level of self-esteem, they will gravitate towards other people with high self-esteem. Yeah. So it really does affect every area of your life, and there is nothing in society to correct it. Once you've acquired this low self-esteem, it's yours for life. And it stays that way. and there's nothing in society which will put it right. You're stuck with it, which is not good news, which is why we created the True Self-Esteem course. Okay, Maud, I think that's enough on low self-esteem.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. It was interesting. I could recognize also many things I'm about to say, but really. And then I was thinking, I made a mistake. I wanted to say something about your qualities, about your good qualities in the presentation, and I was a little bit nervous, so I forgot that. But I want to say about you that you have a very light way of speaking, explaining, and I appreciate that. But this is a difficult topic, actually, because it's a bit uncomfortable to oneself, but you have an entertaining nature. That's
okay. That's good. Thank you for that. Thank you.
So the next question is self-esteem natural to us? And what are some of the signs of high self-esteem?
Okay, good question. So good self-esteem, or just self-esteem, if you like, is your natural condition. It's how you were in the beginning. You know, when you first came into a body, that was your natural condition, to have good self-esteem. It's only when you've become corrupted by the world and you've acquired all sorts of things like guilt, shame, and all sorts of things like that, that things will knock your sense of self-esteem downwards. And yes, yeah. So good self-esteem is your natural condition, and I'll touch upon that later. So how would it be if you had good self-esteem? Well, all the things that the characteristics of someone with good self-esteem are the opposites of somebody with low self-esteem. Let me just give you some ideas about self-esteem, just some little snapshots. So self-esteem is when you don't make excuses for your mistakes. You're comfortable making mistakes and learning from them and fixing them, and they don't spoil your day. Yeah. And it's true that it's completely natural to make mistakes. I would argue that if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough. Yeah, you should be pushing yourself to such a level that mistakes happen. And then you fix them and you learn from them and you don't make the same mistake again. It's fine. Yeah. Self-esteem is when somebody else's bad mood doesn't affect your good mood. You become much more robust in your own sense of emotion. You become much more emotionally stable. Yeah, self-esteem is, for example, when you think it's okay to spend a Saturday night on your own. You're very comfortable spending a Saturday night on your own, and you will find things that will entertain you, and you feel quite comfortable with that. You don't feel lonely at all. And self-esteem is when you don't care how much somebody else makes, how much money they earn. I'm a big fan of the gentleman called Elon Musk. And for a time, he was the richest man in the world. He's now, I think, second richest man in the world. And I admire the man because he's doing some wonderful things. He's shaking up the space industry. He's shaking up the car industry. He's shaking up the power industry. And for one man to do all of those things is quite extraordinary. And I really revel in the fact that he leads, he's attracted and he's leading a really high quality team of people who are coming up with some wonderful ideas. And I think that's most admirable. But I don't have any sense of jealousy of how much money he's earning. And I'm very happy for him to be earning those huge sums of money. It's just entertaining. Yeah. When you have good self-esteem, you have the capacity to think for yourself. You can have your own opinion, even if everybody around you has a different opinion. And if you're asked, you can say, well, my opinion is this. And you're not too abashed, not too shy to say, this is my opinion. Yeah. If you have self-esteem, you can be honest in your relationships. Yeah. And self-esteem is an expression, if you like, of inner power, inner spiritual power. It leads you to being much more stable, spiritually stable, mentally stable. Yeah. And the interesting thing about all those points that I've just been discussing there is that within the Brahma Kumaris, we have the concept of soul conscious, aware of myself as a soul. And there is a strong relationship between being soul conscious and having good self-esteem. In fact, I would argue that if you don't have good self-esteem, it's very difficult to make the spiritual journey. Very hard. Because you're constantly being pulled back by your own nature. Your low self-esteem will pull you back. So in good self-esteem, you have no problem valuing yourself. You would tend to be content and happy all the time. You never have inner turmoil, you have inner peace, because there is very little noise in your head. You don't have to justify yourself to anybody. You don't have to prove yourself to anybody. You're fine as you are. Yeah. And you have no desire to stay in comfort zones. Comfort zones are boring. Yeah. You like a challenge. You like things which will give you something to chew on, to be a challenge that you can tackle and work at and learn things from. If you have good self-esteem, you will also have respect, hold other people in high self-esteem. And this means that you tend to praise people as much as you can, to be supportive of other people, to want to lift them up, not put them down, but to lift them up. And in self-esteem, obstacles are wonderful. They're a chance to learn something new. Problems are just very welcome. Yeah. And if you have good self-esteem, you would not engage, I suggest, in anything like cigarettes and drugs and alcohol and all the things like that, dependent behavior. You wouldn't want to damage your body in that way. And if your body is damaged or ill, you'll go to see a doctor and get it fixed. No drama. Yeah. In self-esteem, you have an attitude of learning and progressing. So you're not stuck in the past, and you can be independent. And when you're successful in your work, you can see, I am successful. Yeah, we made some mistakes on the way, but we fixed those. I'm successful. The job was successful. The project was successful. And you tend to be tolerant in your nature, easygoing about other people. Yeah. And you're able to deal with fear. So you're able to take calculated risks. You'll sit and think about it and take those risks. And in low self-esteem, you don't want to take any risks. In self-esteem, in good self-esteem, you can be humble. You don't need to be number one. You don't need the pleasure and privilege of being number one. You're quite content to be number two. If that's what it helps to get the job done, I'll be number two or even three. Yeah. In self-esteem, you would be calm. You would have a much more calm disposition than if you have low self-esteem. And you would probably never feel lonely. Yeah. I think it's a fair picture of good self-esteem. Yeah. So what do you think, Mara?
Yes, I liked very much that if something happened, illness or some problem, that there's no drama. Go and see a doctor. I like that. It's to be practical.
Yeah.
To be caring for yourself. And that self-esteem is the same as spirituality. So.
Yes.
And that it's natural to make mistakes. It's so good to hear. We do.
I make mistakes all the time. Wonderful.
So the next question, what causes low self-esteem? Where does it come from?
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, just about everybody suffers from low self-esteem, and I'll explain why. It typically, when you're a young child, like 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, your psychology is that you are the center of the universe and you're responsible for everything in your world. That's how you feel about things. So when something goes wrong in your world, you tend to take responsibility for it yourself. And you tend to start to think, that was bad. I must be a bad person. And because you're a young person, you don't have the background experience to be able to say, oh yeah, but that was just a mistake that somebody else made. That doesn't reflect on me. As a young person, you're not able to be mature enough to say that. Let me just give you a little example of how easy it is to create low self-esteem. I'm sure my friend Sigrun, she's left the body now. When she was a young girl, like 7 years old, she was good at art. And for all her life, she was good at art, particularly talented. Anyway, she was 7 years old. Her mother took her to an art shop to buy some more materials. And while they were in the art shop, an American gentleman came in and said, gee, that's a pretty little girl. I could just take you home with me. And Sigrun's mother, being very light, said, oh, that sounds nice. Would you like to go with him? And Sigrun is thinking, my mother would give me away just like that. And in that instant, her sense of security and self-worth disappeared. And her sense of low self-esteem was driven in place. And it stayed that way for the next 45 years. Because young children can't rationalize those events. It's why if you have children, they need to be frequently and regularly supported and told that they're loved to cancel these negative ideas that they get about themselves. And once you've acquired this idea, you can't hear? Can you hear me, Moa? Someone's
Yes.
over here.
I can hear you.
Yeah, the sound is good.
Okay, yeah. I have my incredible, super expensive microphone here, so yeah. So where was I? Yeah. Yeah, so we often think that something happens and it makes me feel bad. And this event has occurred and therefore I feel bad. And we think there's a relationship between the two. But actually, between the event and yourself, there is your filter that you're using to look at the world. And the filter is formed by the sum of all your experiences of life. And what happens is the event occurs, it goes through your filter, and the filter will decide whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. And it's the filter which gives rise to your emotions, your negative feelings. And if you're a child and something happens, you take the blame for yourself, and this starts a process of negative self-talk. I must be a bad person. Yeah. And it also gives you a memory of pain that you've made a mistake or something bad has happened to you. And the first thing that happens is that negative self-talk, I'm a bad person, changes the filter. Now your subconscious goes looking for the evidence that your thought is true. And it likes to be obliging, so it will always find evidence that tells you it's true, you are a bad person. Yeah? And even if there is no evidence, it will create evidence, it will make it up. So not only have you had the idea and the experience of it, your life experience tells you it's true. And this is one reason why low self-esteem sticks like super glue. Yeah, it's very firmly attached to you. And then this negative self-talk and this memory of pain, between them, they are the cause of low self-esteem. That's the seed. That's where it comes from. But there are consequences of that. And the mechanics of it goes on. So that in low self-esteem, the soul itself tends to be weakened, because now the energy of the soul is being dissipated over stupid ideas like I am a bad person and I need to be careful the people don't see my mistakes, or I need to look good every day, I need to be perfect every day. Yeah. And the energy of the soul is being lost in that way. So the soul feels weakened. And practically, it's like you have a hole in your chest, which you need to fill. And people fill it in all sorts of different ways. I remember my mother-in-law would always be baking pies and cakes, much more than the family needed. And I realized that what would happen is that when they had a visitor, my mother-in-law would insist that they take this cake or this pie to go with them. And it was her way of proving to the world that she was a worthwhile person and a good member of society. Yeah. So this weakness in the soul creates dependent behavior. Now, dependent behavior is something that you engage in that will give you a lift, even if only for a short period of time. But it can be a damaging relationship with that dependency. And that would include smoking, drinking, shopping therapy, relationships, yeah? It also includes the 5 vices: anger, lust, greed, attachment, and ego. And it's why, if you have low self-esteem, it's very difficult to make the spiritual journey, because you'll be constantly or repeatedly making mistakes and being attracted back to these 5 vices. And they'll destroy your spiritual stage and your spiritual growth. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's as much as I need to say on that. Also, if you have this weakening in the soul, it also creates codependency. And I know that doesn't translate very well. Codependency is when you feel unworthy to be loved, so you will settle for being needed. So you will tend to adopt or gravitate towards somebody whose life is dysfunctional. Maybe they're an alcoholic, maybe they're a drug addict, maybe they're just pathetic in life. Somebody whose dysfunctional life has a dysfunctional life, and you can swoop in and support them and make them better and make them change. And it's actually quite a complicated relationship. And you'll find that there's a whole raft of behaviors that are true of codependency. Let me just flick that out. Codependency would include behaviors like caretaking, making sure your loved one is home at night, and even if he's drunk, you'll manage to sort him out and get him into bed in time so he's fit, ready to go to work in the morning. You become an enabler. You enable this person to continue being an alcoholic. And you will do things like if your partner hasn't come back home, you'll go out to all the clubs and pubs and back alleys trying to find your partner wherever they are and get them to come back home. It tends to be a controlling relationship. It's not a very nice relationship. It's very unfriendly. It's full of arguments and it's not peaceful. Yeah. So there was a definition of codependency, which is about how somebody whose life is dysfunctional, you want to control them and improve them and what have you. I haven't got the exact definition in front of me, but when I looked at that definition, it was a lady called whose name is not going to come rushing to my mind, but she no, it's just off the tip of my tongue, but she came up with a definition. Melody Beatty was her name, and she said that it was the best definition she could come up with. And I looked at this definition, and then I read the whole book that she wrote, and I thought, no, there's something better. And I came up with this idea that codependency is when somebody else's dysfunctional life causes you to live in a dysfunctional way. And when I finished writing that down, I thought, that's a good definition. That's a much better definition. And as I'm looking at it, I realize that applies to me. That's how I'm living my life now. Well, we've had to put an end to that. We stopped that straight away. Yeah. So it did cause some ructions and riots, but that's how it had to be. Yeah. And this dependent behavior causes you to treat yourself with abuse, and it lowers your sense of self-esteem, and it makes you more dependent. And the codependency is similar. The behavior that you're engaging in is not honorable behavior, and that also lowers your sense of self-esteem and makes you more codependent. It's such a codependency and dependency are such powerful forces that you have things like Alcoholics Anonymous for people suffering from alcohol dependency, and things like CODA, Codependent Anonymous, for people suffering from codependency. These are really quite powerful factors in people's lives, and they both increase your sense of low self-esteem. And these 4 reasons that you have: dependent behavior, codependent behavior, the way that you change the filter with your negative self-talk, and the memory of pain, these 4 factors all play together to make sure that once you've acquired low self-esteem, it's yours forever. It's yours for the rest of your life. And there's nothing in society to fix it. And the phenomena of low self-esteem is not well understood. When I was minded to write this course, the True Self-Esteem course, I did my research on the internet to find out what other people were offering and what were they doing about it. And I did find a number of courses that were entitled self-esteem courses. But when I looked at the detail of them, what they were doing was improving someone's self-confidence. And self-confidence is not the same as self-esteem. So, for example, before I met the Brahma Kumaris, I was a very confident engineer. I was good at my job, and I knew my capabilities. I knew my limits, but I knew my capabilities, and I was very good at my job, perhaps even a little arrogant, but I was good at my job. But I had massive, capital M, massive low self-esteem. Yeah. It's true that somebody who has good self-esteem is likely to be confident because they're willing to try things, to learn things, and to improve themselves. So they would tend to be confident. They would also tend to be capable. They would tend to be good leaders, all of those things. But if you have somebody with low self-esteem, improving their self-confidence, improving their status in life, improving their wealth, none of those things will change their sense of low self-esteem. It's stuck on them. The only person who can fix it is that person themselves. It's just a fact of life. And as I said, the psychology industry also does not understand self-esteem very well. There's a nice book, and it's actually a very good book, a lady called Kristin Neff. She wrote a book on self-compassion. And in there, she describes self-esteem as how you feel about yourself when you're doing good, when you're winning, when you've just achieved some great thing, you've run a race or something. You like that, you know? And she says it's terrible to teach people self-esteem because we found that whenever we teach people self-esteem like this, all the narcissistic scores go up. You have to say that very carefully. Narcissistic scores go up. Well, I'm not surprised. You're teaching narcissism. You're teaching them that narcissistic skill. Yeah, it's not self-esteem at all. But apart from that, Kristin Neff's book is actually very good. It's a good book. It's worth reading. It's worth spending some time, investing some time to study this aspect of self-compassion. Okay, I think I've spoken enough on that particular subject. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much, Peter. Very interesting. And thanks for being personal, and thanks for, I find it interesting about the codependence. Really.
It's a really interesting subject and very deep, very deep. You know, so somebody who has codependence, they endow their identity in their partner, and they lose their own sense of identity. It means that they're easy to walk over. People walk all over them, and they have no boundaries, and their life is pretty horrible. It's not a good place to be. It really isn't. And it's just a consequence of low self-esteem.
So the next question, there is a sensitive part inside ourselves. You have touched upon that, the child trauma, or what you call it. But it's many times it's ignored. We need to listen. We need to address it and listen to it. In the True Self-Esteem course, you present an exercise of communication between our inner child and our inner wise, nurturing parent. There is also the critical parents. Can you tell us more about this?
This is also a very big subject, and I can give you a thumbnail sketch of it. But basically, each of us has an inner child, and not just one inner child. We have multiple inner childs. At each stage in your development as a human being, you have an inner child that goes with that. And if at that stage in your life, your inner child is damaged in some way, then that tends to carry through into the rest of your life. And all the ones following, all the inner children, all the children of your inner child's following tend to be damaged in consequence. And I'll give you an example of this. I mean, I'm an engineer, or I was an engineer, and I like things practical and, you know, slide rule and steel and concrete, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, that's my stuff. And when my friend Diane Tillman came up with this inner child concept, I'm thinking that this is psychological woolly duffy stuff, you know. And I was so pleased to have Diane Tillman on the course that whatever she said was fine. And I put it in the course and dressed it up as well as I was able to. There was an occasion when Diane and I gave this course in India together, in Madhaban, the headquarters in India. And one afternoon, Diane ran a workshop just on this inner child. So I went along to it, and Diane gave a commentary. It's actually in part 4 of the course. It's very beautiful. But I couldn't hear the commentary because the fans were running and my hearing's not that good anyway. But I knew the commentary, so I was able to speak it in my own head for myself. After that commentary, Masana from London organized a little workshop for 5 of us out of the group. And she said, "How are you feeling?" And I said, "Well, I'm feeling irritated." But I had no idea why. Excuse me. And about 20 minutes later, she asked the same question. I said, "Well, I'm feeling angry." And then, no idea why. And about 20 minutes later, she asked the same question again. And I couldn't speak. I was so emotional that I knew if I tried to speak, I would lose it completely and just burst into tears. Can you imagine this? And I didn't know why. And at the end of that little workshop, I was able to say, my inner child is in rage. And it turned out I had to go up onto a rooftop to spend some time thinking about this and trying to negotiate with my inner child as to what had been going on. And it turns out that even at that time, I had been angry all my life, and my inner child was carrying this anger, and I had been pushing the inner child into a corner. And now I was inviting him to come out of his corner. He was letting me know he was not a happy chappy. And it gives you a number of points to think about. It's very easy to suppress your inner child and push him into a corner. But if you do that, the problem won't go away. In fact, if anything, you make the problem worse. And the inner child will just accumulate this emotion, and it will affect, in a practical way, it will affect your life. It will drain your emotional energy and be a distraction for you. Even if you're not conscious of it, it will drive you through your subconscious. It will make you do things which are not necessarily rational. And I can now I'm not angry anymore. Now I can look back and see how limiting my behavior was right through my life. I limited myself because of this anger. Yeah. So it's easy to suppress your inner child. And in the True Self-Esteem course, we encourage people to have a dialogue. And it's a very simple exercise. You need to sit down with a sheet of paper and invite your inner child to come to speak to you. Then you sit and wait patiently until your inner child speaks. The inner child must always speak first. And then you respond with active listening. Active listening is repeating back what you've heard in a different way. So the inner child might say, I am angry. And you might respond back, you're irritated about something. I've heard you, I understand what you've said, I'm feeding it back to you. And only when the inner child is comfortable that you are actually listening, then you can start to give advice and or take more information in. Yeah, but it's actually quite an art to do this. But it's very simple, piece of paper, and you write the responses down. And the reason that you write them down is because when you write things down, your ego cannot pretend that it didn't happen. It goes into your conscious mind in a way that the ego cannot block it, because it's in black and white in front of you. Yeah, so it's a good technique. Journaling is generally a good technique. And in this way, you can communicate with your inner child. And your inner child is actually quite wise. The inner child always knows what is the right thing to do, and it will tell you if you're prepared to listen. Yeah, so when you have tackled the problem presented to you by your inner child, you will find that your inner child grows, becomes a more mature child. But then you get the problems of later life to solve. And there's layers and layers and layers of this to solve. It's not just one fix and one piece of paper and you've got the whole thing fixed. This just goes on for a long time. And I'm in the middle of that process myself. I'm trying to work through dealing with my inner child, even at this time. It's an interesting process. There's a lady I know, she's a psychotherapist, a lovely, lovely lady. She says that my intellect self, my intelligent self, is like the 10% of the iceberg, and the emotional self is the 90% underneath. And she tells me that between the two, I have a layer of reinforced concrete, solid, can't get through. So this is an interesting challenge. Yeah. So if you have issues in your life, dialoguing with your inner child is a good place to start. Fear, anger, sadness, all of those things. Have a dialogue with your inner child. He'll be in there. He'll be in the recipe somewhere. He'll be a part of the exercise to fix it. So it's a good place to start. And you can do this by yourself. Yeah, it's a good place to start. Yeah, and you also have you can actually be the wise, nurturing parent for your inner child. And you need to be mindful that sometimes we play the role of the critical parent. How could you be so stupid, you child? You silly, weepy child. You know, how could you be such an effeminate person? Yeah, this is the critical parent, and it really doesn't help. No, you have to stop doing that. I better stop. I see we only have about 10 minutes left.
Yes, yes. I want to thank you for that. I want to open up if there is anyone having a question. I think we have time for, depending on how
Yeah.
long it takes. But we have a meditation for maybe 5 minutes, a bit more. So I have more questions. If no one is asking anything, we can go on. But otherwise, it would be nice if anyone. Doesn't seem like anyone is having a question. Okay, then I have a good question about the God. How is, let me see how it was formulated. How can the love of God help us when we are in emotional pain?
Oh, you have to understand why you would get to emotional pain in the first place. Emotional pain comes when you're spiritually not strong and something has happened to you that pushes you sideways and you lose the control of your emotions. Or your emotions, oh no, that's not a good way of putting it. Your emotions will rise up because you're not able to deal with this issue. And rather than the love of God, I think that you need to be mindful of your spiritual nature. And the more spiritual you are, then the easier it becomes to deal with the adversities of life. And you tend to be much more stable in your emotions. So where does God fit into this? God fits into this in a way that he will give you guidance as to how to live your life in a more secure way. And he will tell you that the best starting point is to become aware of yourself as soul. And if you're aware of yourself as soul, the one main characteristic of soul, the soul is eternal. It cannot be damaged. It can never die, never has done. It has been around forever and will continue to be around forever. And when you have that consciousness, then the problems of this world tend to be much smaller in size. You can see them in a context that really is not a big deal. Yeah, whatever it is. When you are involved in a problem, it seems to occupy the entirety of your life, and it's such an enormous, difficult problem and tends to be overwhelming. But once you understand that you are part of eternity, then this is no big deal. It's much smaller. It's much easier to handle. And it comes from being soul conscious, aware of yourself as a soul, an eternal being. And that is also a long process, because you've, over many lifetimes, you've acquired attachment to things of this world, attachment to your own body even, yeah? And these are the things that you need to quietly release bit by bit. And it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And it's a whole series of realizations, each step taking you closer and closer to God. And God has so much love for you. He will look after you. If you tell him that you want to make the journey towards him, he will give you all the tools and information and knowledge that you need to make the journey. He will show you how to do it and make it as easy for you as he possibly can. But you have to make the effort. Yeah? Does that help you?
Yes, very much. Lovely. There is a question, but I feel we don't have time for it because there was a time to ask, no one asked, so I took this.
Okay.
But I can read it out. It says, to be your best friend. Can you say something about that? But there's 5 minutes left, and it's good to hold the timings, I think. So we will have an experience, meditation.
Love to, yeah. Are you going to play the music your end or my end?
No, Susan is the technical.
Oh, well, right. Okay, we've got technical.
Everything.
Wonderful. I let the body relax. Mentally, I observe my thoughts. Using the power of my mind, I allow my thoughts to slow down and be less demanding. They're still there, but I tell my mind that I can deal with those thoughts later. This is my quiet time. I can let the thoughts go. I will deal with them later. I breathe in the light of peace. I let my body relax more. I breathe in the light of peace and let I, the soul, be surrounded by the light of peace. I feel a sense of inner peace flowing into my mind like a gentle mist. My body relaxes more. I become still. I feel peace. Peace means not having to think so much. No worries. I am a detached observer, living in just this moment. In this moment, I stay in the light of peace and let go of all other thoughts. I can be free. I reflect on how I have lived my life up to today. How much have I allowed my thinking, my moods, to be controlled by others or something else, something that is outside of me, not part of me? An event, a person, a situation, someone else's opinion. I ask myself, who controls my thoughts? Does God control my thoughts? Do my parents control my thoughts? Do my friends or family? No. I control my thoughts. I am the creator and manager of my thoughts. I think my thoughts. Do I like my thoughts? Do I like how I think about myself? If I think a negative thought about myself, is it true? Let me try the true reality. I am okay. I am good. I am naturally beautiful. Any old negative habits I developed were out of my innocent desire to be valued. The real me is good. The real me is peaceful and loving. I am a good soul. I am good. I really am. How do those thoughts feel? This is reality. This is truth. I am okay. I am good. I feel the power of being able to decide my thoughts. I'm learning to be the master of my thoughts. I am okay. I am peaceful and loving. I like this thought. I am okay. I am naturally good. I am naturally beautiful. Om Shanti. I am a peaceful soul.
Thank you so much, Peter. It feels really good to having this talk with you and this meditation. It was really nice. So thank you, Susan, also for doing all the technical things. It would be nice to see you in picture if you put on your camera. Yeah, Susan. Hi. Also Peter. Both of you.
I'm trying to turn it on, but it's not turning on.
Oh.
Susan's got me locked off. Oh. Yeah, Susan has me locked down. She needs to turn it back on.
Yeah. Oh, now you disappeared. Now you're back. So, yeah, maybe we meet again like this.
One thing I should say, if people really do have questions about self-esteem, they need to speak to you or to Susan and say, we need to run the True Self-Esteem course in Stockholm. What a good idea.
Yeah, it is a good idea, actually. We had at least I had the thought. It's a lot of material, but maybe one can make some.
Yeah, share it around, get lots of people to help translate it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, definitely. This is a very important topic that it's really, if one work with it, it feels like it can help. It can help me a lot if I work with it. And it's good to discuss it and take off the, it's not a taboo, but it's a bit uncomfortable maybe to confess that, yeah, I am like that, or I feel like that. So it's, yeah. So yeah, that's about it. So I say goodbye.
Okay, thank you
to everyone.
Thank you.